Gen Z here, playing on my PC and outside as a kid, didn't have friends in school or high school, and reclused myself into my room and stuck to my PC. And about the sensitivity thing, why is it so many people get so sensitive when I say Christianity is false or God isn't real? And we are back with another episode of the Julius Files. I am your host, and you already know that. I'm coming to you from my little makeshift studio in my time in Florida. I guess I do want to say that this is going to be a Q&jP, the Julius perspective, because I posted a video on my YouTube. It was a short due to a conversation that I had with my son, and it was along the lines of him feeling sorry for me because I didn't have all of these cool gadgets to actually play with when I was a kid. And like I said in the video, it clicked that this generation wasn't necessarily accustomed to having to go outside to entertain themselves. So I felt like maybe there was a certain amount of mental and physical toughness that maybe hasn't been getting developed by falling off a bike or falling out of a tree. But I had a comment from a Gen Zer that actually that I felt like was worth literally addressing and making a podcast so that I can actually get to a deeper explanation on the overall and legitimately respond to this question in general. So you know what the video was. Here was the actual response from the Gen Z. It says, Gen Z here, playing on my PC and outside as a kid, didn't have friends in school or high school, and reclused myself into my room and stuck to my PC. And about the sensitivity thing, why is it so many people get so sensitive when I say Christianity is false or God isn't real? Why is it these people get offended when they're acting racist or homophobic or transphobic? And why is this that every old generation hates on the generation of younger teens, younger adults, and new adults, as if the youngest generation is what's wrong with society and it'd all be better without them? Gen Zers were raised by millennials and Gen X who were raised by baby boomers. What's wrong with society is this mentality of hating the youngest generation for perceived wrongs and blaming them for everything. Capitalism is what's leading the society downfall. Unfettered, unregulated capitalism. So all the industries that we have cut corners and do so unscrupulous things with no oversight that hurts your average Jane. Obviously, there is so much to unpack there that I just felt like, okay, this is a good podcast in general because I want to get a couple things straight, or at least, I don't know, maybe get some things off my chest, because I feel like there's some things this generation does need to actually hear, and at the same time make a legitimate attempt to respond to this lady. Because working in my businesses, and I guess I should say, like, all of these, if it wasn't for my businesses, I probably wouldn't be able to do this podcast. I mean, coffee junkies and pizza junkies and Scared Rabbit and Vickers are what make it possible. I mean, like, and if you're listening to this and can support me, the best way to support me is to actually click subscribe. But these businesses themselves have put me in a position where I am having to work with different generations. And I do see and understand that there is a divide, and I'm legitimately trying to put effort into understanding the generational divides, while being a proud Gen Xer myself, and understanding that if I can't get through to these younger generations, I can't get them to give their best. And I, at the same time, I feel that if they're going to come into my businesses and actually give me something of themselves, I feel the need to contribute or reciprocate, that whole process. And candidly, it comes across as tough love, because I feel like I'm the one that's put in the position of actually delivering some harsh realities that this generation has had the ability to just stick their nose in a screen and look to answers in life through Google, and Google just does not give you the harsh realities of the world in general. So I'm definitely, I mean, like, to start off with, yeah, I made a blunt statement that that this generation was not actually having to go outside to entertain themselves. Some of it, and again, I bring it back to my generation, parents trying to protect their children is not doing them any favors because they're not developing those mental and physical strengths. And I just had a very candid conversation with a friend of mine to say, look, I got to remind you that as parents, it is our job to be raising our kids to become adults where they spend 80% of their life and literally be productive members of society. And some of that is literally exposing them to the harsh realities that life is not fair. You don't get everything you want, that bad decisions will lead you down a bad road. And that's the level of parental that I've taken it with anybody and everybody, but specifically with my own children. And love me or hate me, I mean, like, my children got a good dose of what being an adult and being a productive member of society was actually all about. So to directly address some of her thoughts and concerns, because I did respond to her in a very thoughtful manner. When you're talking about Christianity and saying Christianity is false or your God isn't real, well, one, that's a matter of opinion. Two, you need to literally accept this country was founded on Christianity, and the rules and regulations were written so that people had the freedom to express their own religious beliefs. But I'm just candidly here to say, whether you agree or not, if you come at somebody to say Christianity is false or your God isn't real, one, you're being disrespectful. So whatever you get in return, you're asking for. And it really does come back to you might not have got what you wanted, but you got what you asked for. And you need to understand that as a generational younger, you're supposed to respect your elders. You're damn sure not supposed to go out of your way to disrespect them. So when you're going out of your way to literally try and poo-poo Christianity or tell somebody that their God isn't real, well, you know what? Like I was the first to say, I am not a man of religion. I am a man of faith, because my relationship with my God is between me and my God. The last thing that I'm going to do is judge somebody else for their stance on religion. But directly going at people and making those type of statements like, you need to wake up and grow up and stop being a disrespectful shit, because that's exactly what you're being. And then you want to be offended when people actually come at you and return the disrespect that you've actually given them. Why do people get offended when they're racist or homophobic or transphobic? Well, I want to be very candid with you. Politics do not want to let racism die. And when it comes to being homophobic, man, that ship sailed a long time ago. And I'm going to be honest with you. I am live and let live. You do you. But I'm telling you, just being honest, a lot of people from the older generation are looking at the trans community and being like, you're confused. And I tend to agree with them that I'm sitting there going, I do not buy into sex changes for youths. I mean, like, at that age, you're still very young and impressionable. And I do think that there is a potential amount of literal confusion there. But again, it's not mine to judge, but I'm sitting there going, people have a right to live the life that they want to live. And when you just throw things in their face, I'm sitting there going, let's be real. Like, the thing is, everything swings in a pendulum. As Gen Zers, the part that you are not there to have any frame of reference to is that you were swinging from this side of the pendulum. What was this side of the pendulum? Slavery, real racism, real suppression of women. And you're talking about when you make these statements to this generation, they watch that pendulum over there and they know that it's wrong, and they watched it swing to the middle where it was fixing racism and fixing slavery and encouraging female empowerment. And now all of a sudden you want them to start accepting the trans community. Okay, now we're swinging the other way. Now we're getting to over here where I'm like, okay, you know where I'll draw the line? if you're going to be a dipshit and say you have the right to be a cat and be recognized as a cat, and you should be able to have a litter box in your classroom, I'm like, come on, you know what? That is one step too far away from reality. So when you have older, wiser people that are far more experienced in realities of life and actual pain in life, like this to them is coming across as absurdity. So don't be surprised when they look at you a little bit disrespectfully, because they're looking at you as very naive at best, and trying to live in an absolute unrealistic fantasy world at worst. So, like, this is the reality of the world that you're living in. And when you want to come at somebody as a younger that you don't actually know the harsh realities of life and cast these absurdities, I'm sorry, I'm personally going to draw a limit as an individual that wants to identify as a cat and wants to have a litter box. Like, I think that's it's a step too far. I just can't buy into it. But again, if you want to go home and act like a cat and piss in a litter box, you do you. Quit expecting the rest of the world that actually lives in reality to conform to that, because it's just one too far. So we get to the next piece of it where you're talking about hating on generations. And look, I'm not going to deny that there's a little bit of truth to it, because you go by, I mean, we used to give the older generations a hard time. You had to walk through 5 miles of snow and walk to school every day. And I get, there used to be Little House on the Prairie, and we've come a certain ways. But I am seeing like a major disconnect at this level of generation. And I'm trying to actually understand it. It's what I'm coming to understand in a lot of ways is that the age of the internet, all of this technology, all of this massive access to information and huge amount of noise that goes on in social media, it's a little bit of extra something that is actually happening to this generation. And it's one of those where, look, I just have to be candid with you. If you are a Gen Z, like, you don't know anything about the struggles, the real struggles of slavery and inequality. You don't know anything about the depression, the literal depression of literally worrying about not having food or not having a job. You don't have any frame of reference when it comes to World War I and World War II and every other war that this country has decided to actually get involved in. Like, you don't have any frame of reference of real struggle. Now, some of that is like me being a Gen X. I have a frame of reference because of my grandparents and their parents. And there are certain things in life that I personally went through and struggled that give me a real frame of reference of life is not fair. That's not a reason worth living or not to live it. But the point is, candidly, we look at you and we roll our eyes because we know every generation wants to give the next generation something better. And your generation is truly getting the best that we all have to offer. Like, you had generations that had to fix the issue of plumbing and running and clean water, generations that had the industrial age and literally creating a massive amount of jobs, a community and society, the generations that went through the transition of getting to where we are, where it is generally a free society and what you want to do with your life is accepted, leading up to the internet age where so much is just accessible at the tip of the fingertips. You don't know what struggle is. You don't have any comprehension of what real struggle is. And then you want to say that the struggle of your day is high cost of living, and you want to blame it on capitalism. Like, I will personally laugh at you, and the people in general are going to laugh at you because they already know what you don't. While you're busy listening to these dipshit jackhole politicians that want to cast aspersions about how capitalism is the problem, all they're doing is diverting attention away from themselves, because it's not capitalism that's the problem. Capitalism is what has brought the vast majority of the world out of poverty. It is the state. It's the government that they have latched onto those dollars, never had to meet a payroll. They spend endlessly. They have the ability to print money to devalue the money. Like, higher cost of living has got nothing to do with capitalism. Increased quality of life, that's because of capitalism. Increased life longevity, again, that's because of capitalism. The cool shit that you literally are able to occupy all of your attention, or me literally creating this podcast and able to disseminate information to millions of people, that is all based on capitalism. The problem is when government and politicians get involved and they make promises they shouldn't be making, and they spend money that they are not the ones that are responsible for earning. Like, I personally think there should be a litmus test when it comes to politicians, that if you have not had to meet a payroll and had the actual responsibility of employing people, you shouldn't be a politician. But I realize that's just my opinion. But the reality is, it's capitalism that have created all of these jobs. It's capitalism that allows us to chase our dreams and pursue opportunities for our personal betterment, yes, but it ends up being for the betterment of the rest of the world. Like, philanthropy happens because capitalism created the riches that allows philanthropy to happen. All of you want to look back and talk about Andrew Carnegie and the Rockefellers and all of the wonderful philanthropy that they've actually done throughout the course of the back half of their life. It ain't no different than the whole Steve Jobs thing. Like, you didn't want him, you didn't appreciate him, but you needed him because his type of leadership style would not fly today. If you truly looked back at history and you saw what Andrew Carnegie did to develop his wealth, what the Rockefellers did to develop their wealth, you would be appalled by the type of capitalist that they were. Okay. But you look at the philanthropy, not realizing Carnegie is responsible for roughly 2,200 libraries built. Why did he build those libraries? Because he truly wanted to disseminate information, to get information out to the masses, to empower them to live their best lives. That's what he was able to do with the philanthropy. But if you look at what he did to earn the money to be able to be that person, like, okay, how do you want it? You can't have it both ways. Like, capitalism is a great thing. It has accomplished so many great things, but you get a couple bad actors, you get a couple big businesses that get in bed with politicians, and then you want to poo-poo capitalism instead of looking at the source of the problem. You got a couple bad actors in big business that are going out of their way to get in bed with politicians, and then you got politicians that want to create policies and talk smack and then literally direct the attention at capitalism. And I get it. That's the whole thing. As our generation, we're looking at you going, how foolish, how naive. You have not grown up yet to actually see the real facts and the truth that capitalism is a great thing. It has been what has been the fuel behind all of these massive quantum leaps in technology and all of this cool shit that you get to play with, and none of it would exist without capitalism. And in the end, bringing back to what you were saying, I realize it's my generation's fault. Like, we did not find a way to talk to you about or artificially try and show you some type of struggle. We literally tried to protect you from those things. Now we're finding out the unintended consequences. Because I'll be the first to admit, my father thought that I grew up too fast and he tried to slow me down. And by 14 years old, it was too late. I was already working full time. I wanted to make money. So I made my own mistakes as a parent. But when I was raising my kids, I was like, you got all the time to be an adult, be a kid. And I look back now, I should have made them get a job and actually made them start to interact with other adults to find out, you know what? When you go to work for somebody, you're going to be held accountable. If you act stupid, you're going to be called on your shit. It is not just about going in there to clocking in and draw a paycheck. You literally have to contribute value in order to receive value from the other direction. These are all things that I'm like, we can look back and hindsight is 2020, but this is where that level of you feeling disrespected or you feel like we are poo-pooing your generation. This is where it's coming from. And I heard an old saying where it was like, you're not a normal person if you don't start out as highly liberal as a kid and then literally move towards conservative as an adult. And I'm not telling you how to be on your politics, but what they're saying is, of course, as a kid, you're going to be like, well, why isn't everybody just doing everything they can to take care of everybody else? And then as you start getting older, you're like, well, wait a minute. I work my ass off and the government already takes 50% of my income in taxes. Why do I got to pay for this lazy shit over here that doesn't want to get off their ass and provide for themselves? Yeah, I know that's a harsh reality, but it is a actual reality. And these are things that it's just simply going to take you time to develop those wisdoms, to gain those experiences before you start understanding, like, there's nothing wrong with helping people. But when the government starts talking about taking your hard-earned money to help people that are just sitting on their ass and refusing to help themselves, you start to get a little bit resentful about that. And I mean, that's just the harsh reality of the world in general. Let's see, what's wrong with society, the mentality of hating the youngest generation? No, I think that I touched on that. And I think that I really did touch on capitalism. So I want to close this with a message to Gen Z. And that is, like, everybody goes through this. I am almost 50 years old, and I can remember being 20-something and looking at my dad and being like, you don't know what you're talking about. It's a new day and age. And I look back and laugh because I was full of shit. I was a dumbass that didn't know any better, and it just simply took time and life and the bumps and bruises and knocking me down before I started to understand where they came from, because there are certain unalienable truths that are just, they stand the test of time. And a lot of you in the younger generation haven't figured them out. But the reality is, you are asking people to accept a certain amount of absurdities, and the older generation just simply knows better than that. So take that into mind. Live your life the way you want to live your life, because I don't see anybody in these generations literally telling you that you shouldn't be living your own life on your own terms. What I do see them saying is, don't expect me to buy into your brand of bullshit, because they've got more age and wisdom. They've got more experience. They've actually lived longer. That part of being a part of this country is live and let live. And I am all about it. But I do hope that you do actually start coming to the conclusion of seeing it's not capitalism that's the problem. It's the government and the promises they're making and what they're doing with the dollars that are generated through capitalism. That's the problem. All right. I know that there are some people that need to hear this. Please share this show, because there is a younger generation out there that, one way or another, they need to start being exposed to the harsh realities that are in fact life. And there's a whole nother podcast and a whole nother conversation that I would very much like to have about what the expectations that this generation is putting on their employers, because I just think that their expectations are a little lofty. I think that you cannot expect everything to come from your employer, because again, it is capitalism. It is commerce. It is supposed to be about an exchange of value, and like, it's a give and take relationship. And if you're going to take a paycheck, what are you going to give in return? It's the problem that when you get to the point that you don't want to just take the paycheck, you want to take so much more than the paycheck, and it comes down to unrealistic expectations. So again, I know that there are people that are in my generation, that you know a lot of the people in the younger generation, and I plainly, they need to hear this, because we do need to be bridging that generational divide. We do need to be finding common ground so that we can actually talk with each other. And the more that we repeat these harsh truths, the more we combat the BS that the politicians are speaking to this generation, because they're filling their head with a bunch of lies and a bunch of BS that is absolutely counterproductive for what it's going to take to move this world forward, to move this generation forward, so that they can grow up and start working on the problems of their times the way our generation has, the way the previous generation has. All right, till next time, you guys have a good night.